All right. Welcome to the eighth webinar session of the Philippines Partnership for Sustainable Agriculture, or PPSA Working Groups Learning Series. This is the second thematic session for this learning series after the Inclusive Value Chain Development session held last year. In case you missed our previous sessions, you can always access the recordings through our learning platforms. Next slide, please. So we have our website and our YouTube channel and Spotify podcast to always go back to the recordings of the webinar sessions, and of course listen to the learnings and the discussions discussed during the sessions. So before I officially start, my name is VJ, the Communications Manager of PPSA, and I will be your host for this afternoon session. Now, to give you the objectives and the overview of the agenda of the session, may I call on Ami Chua, PPSA's Country Director, for the introduction.
Thank you so much, VJ. Good afternoon, everyone. As VJ mentioned, this is the 8th installment of our 9-part PPSA Working Groups Learning Series. If this is your first time to attend the series, a warm welcome to you. In the past years, we have been part of a number of dialogues that identify gaps and challenges faced by agribusinesses and other agri and forestry players. One thing heavily mentioned in those sessions is value chain financing, or agricultural financing, in terms of availability, accessibility, and appropriateness. So today, as part of our efforts to initiate information sharing and dialogue on agricultural financing, we invited a set of speakers who will share with us first, or number one, the current portfolio and situation of agri-financing in the Philippines, specifically in relation to the implementation of the Agri-Agra Law, and second, existing financing opportunities of various organizations which can help facilitate a smoother cash flow from outside of your respective value chains or projects. So thank you in advance to our speakers for sharing their time and expertise with us and being open to answer the questions. Then from those discussions, we will move on to the open forum, and this time, this is where we will open the floor for your inputs. We hope to hear from you about the difficulties you are facing in accessing financing opportunities, or know whether the financial products available meet the demands of your agri-food chains, and of course your insights on how the government, financial institutions, and other enablers can strengthen their support. As PPSA operates both prop-based and cross-cutting or thematic working groups, as mentioned by VJ earlier, we hope to regroup the Agri-Financing Working Group to facilitate more dialogues and work on collaborative projects, towards, of course, ensuring effective financial flow from actors within and outside the value chains. So your inputs today will greatly help us as we set up that working group, and as well as provide inputs for our discussions with related government agencies and organizations. So we ask for your participation, especially during the roundtable discussion. Again, many thanks for being with us this afternoon. We hope that you will find this session useful, and more importantly, we hope we can find ways to work together towards achieving a state where everyone grows, including our farmers. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat at mabuhay mula sa PPSA.
Thank you so much for that, Ami. So for this session, after our first speaker, we will have our question and answer with her. So just type your questions through the Q&A box you see on your screen, and we will request our speaker to respond to some of those. All right. So, well, we mentioned in our event concept and backgrounder that agricultural financing is one of the most important components towards agricultural sustainability and development. So, but challenges remain for farmers and our fisherfolks who cannot access financing opportunities. Fortunately, we have different institutions who have their programs, policy agenda, and initiatives to ensure farmers continue to access financing. So to give us the general overview and situation of agri-financing in the country, we are fortunate to be with us here, Ms. Maria Cynthia M. Sison, who currently sits as the Deputy Director of the Supervisory Policy and Research Department of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. She is responsible for handling regulations related to banking supervision, including agricultural finance. So prior to joining the SPRD, she was involved in the on-site examination and off-site surveillance of three banks and other non-bank financial institutions. She graduated from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and obtained her master's degree in development management from the Asian Institute of Management. She is also a certified financial risk manager. So with that, welcome po in PPSA, Ma'am Cynthia. The mic is yours.
So magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Before I proceed, I would like to first thank the Philippines Partnership for Sustainable Agriculture and Grow Asia for inviting the BSP po in this learning series. And we are hoping that through this forum, we will be able to share the recent initiatives being undertaken by the BSP in coordination also with other government agencies like the DA, the DAR, and the ACPC. And the initiatives will hopefully show how these will empower farmers and fisher folks through agricultural finance and on a broader scale, enhance financing to the sector and rural community development. So let us move to the next slide. My discussion will cover two areas. I will spend a bit of time discussing bank compliance ethics, and then this will be followed by the BSP's plan of action on agricultural financing. So let me start with the Agri-Agra compliance statistics. For those of you who may not be familiar, there is a law right now which mandates banks to lend out 25% of their total loanable funds. So when you say total loanable funds, these are the funds that they generate from deposits and capital since the enactment of RA 10,000, which was in 2011. So 25% of that cumulative amount should be lent out to agrarian reform, agriculture, and fisheries credit. And 10% of that, of the 25%, should be made available for agrarian reform. Now, if you look at the table, this is the latest compliance statistics of banks as of end December 2020. At the second to the last row, we see that the banking system was able to lend out 713.6 billion, all banks, for this particular mandated credit. But even with such an amount, banks were still unable to comply with the mandatory Agri-Agra credit requirement. If you look at item A2 downstairs, fourth to the last row, the 642.4 billion in agricultural credit only translates to a 9% compliance ratio, which is below the 15% requirement. And the 71.2 billion, which is A1, or the compliance with AGRA, translates to a 1% compliance ratio, which is also below the 10% minimum requirement. And a number of factors have contributed to this bank compliance profile. If we look at the demand side of financing, we all know that environmental risks from natural calamities, pests, or climate change, this is a major factor which weighs down farm production, commodity prices, and the capacity to pay of agricultural borrowers. And second, agricultural borrowers have limited access to programs that can enhance their technical, financial management, and business skills to be able to adopt a business approach to farming. So that is on the demand side. If we look naman at the supply side, not all banks admittedly have the specialized technical and institutional capacity to quantify and measure and mitigate risks related to agricultural financing. And specific to the agrarian reform sector, they have difficulty in lending to this particular sector because the list of beneficiaries is not readily available. So it's hard for them to find the qualified borrowers for agrarian reform. Now, apart from the challenges related to the inherent risks to agricultural financing, we can also say that the low compliance status also stems from a very high mandatory Agri-Agra credit requirement. So if you look at the table, this is the fifth row from the top. The mandated Agri-Agra credit requirement is at 1.8 trillion. So this is the amount which banks are supposed to lend to the sector. And this is closely tied to the growth of the banking system for the past 10 years since the enactment of the law. So since the banking system has been growing, if you apply a fixed percentage to that ever-expanding base, then the amount will be cumulatively will be high over time. And just to provide a few statistics, the rate of growth in banking system assets over the past 2012 to 2020 year, it was at 25%. But if you look at the growth in the share of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries to nominal GDP, this only grew by 3% for the same period. So there's a marked distinction between the growth in both components. And even if the Agri-Agra compliance is, it seems to be low, the absolute amount, it is still significant if you compare this to the share of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries to nominal GDP. So the 713.6 billion is actually around 39% of the share of AFF to nominal GDP. And interestingly, we also note there was actually a recently published paper by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. This was authored by Mr. Geoffrey Ducanes. And he attempted to estimate loan demand of small farmers and fishers in the Philippines. And based on the PIDS paper, the estimated loan demand of small farmers and fisherfolk as of end December 2020 is around 21.6% only of the total mandatory credit requirement. So based on that study, there's a big disparity between the requirement for banks and the actual demand coming from the sector because it's only 21.6%. Now, if we adjust the mandatory credit requirement to only consider that portion, which is what we call direct compliance, because banks actually have options. They can comply with the requirement by lending directly to qualified borrowers, or they can do it through what we call alternative compliance. But the alternative compliance, the proceeds, the benefits, they all redound to the expected beneficiaries. It's just that we are passing this through certain institutions. So if we adjust the mandated credit requirement to only consider the lending directly to qualified borrowers, the estimated loan demand is only at 50% of the minimum credit requirement. So earlier, if we compare it to the total, it's 25%. If we compare it to yung portion lang na direct compliance, it is only 50%. So it's still below the demand. And if we compare the actual amount, so in that paper, the estimated loan demand, the highest amount for end 2020, it is 386.2 billion against what is being granted to qualified borrowers. So the table that you see, that is actually the 713.6 is a combination of what we call direct and alternative compliance. The direct compliance component of 713.6 is actually 380.2 billion. So if we just look at those figures, it appears that banks are currently lending out amounts which generally approximate loan demand. So the paper, we just got the numbers from the paper. And even though they are doing this, they are still being penalized for the requirement because if you look at the table, they are still lending below the mandated amount because of the base, their base is growing. So this is what we are seeing on the ground. So if we move to the next slide, the BSP actually has been working with, I mentioned, the DADAR and the ACPC to think of ways by which we can further enhance agricultural financing, recognizing that these are all the related issues that we need to address. So in 2020, the government agencies, we work together first to introduce amendments to the IRR of RA number 10,000 to address operational challenges which we encountered in the implementation of the law over the past 10 years. But the adjustments that we made were still, these still had to be within the context of the RA number 10,000 because that is the prevailing law. We had to work within that legal regime. But for this year, what we are working on is we intend to push for the enactment of comprehensive amendments to the law. The comprehensive amendments recommend a financing approach that will consider the broader requirements of the agricultural ecosystem, and I will discuss this in a bit more detail later. But first, in the next slide, let me discuss the amendments to the IRR. And this was just recently signed on 22 February 2021. In general, what we have hoped for to do is to first promote bank investment in Agri-Agra eligible securities. Second, we try to find ways to broaden access of the agrarian reform sector to bank financing. And third, we emphasize certain special types of lending arrangements that are allowed under RA 10,000 but are not really that much highlighted. So in detail, in the next slide, how do we enhance investment by banks in Agri-Agra eligible debt securities? We deleted the current accreditation requirement for debt securities, so that makes it easier for them to invest. They don't have to go through an accreditation process. And on the part of the accrediting agency, it actually frees up their resources so that they can direct these toward other critical services for the benefit of the Agri-Agra sector. So it's a streamlining of the current requirement. And second, we also allowed banks to invest in shares of stock of companies that are engaged in activities under Section 23 of AFMA, because that is what is under the law. In the previous IRR, only investments in debt securities were allowed, but now we have expanded the opportunity to allow banks, if they wish to do so, they can also invest in equity, subject, of course, to our prudential requirements on their investment. And for agrarian reform credit, we worked with the DAR to try to find ways to make the provisions more flexible, but still ensure that these remain aligned with the law. So first, the DAR, we have allowed financing to members of an ARB household because we know that an agricultural person, he's part of a support system, which is his family. But currently, under RA 10,000, it is very specific. You only lend to the agricultural-related borrower, not to his family members. But for the agrarian reform, we found the flexibility. Members of an ARB household, if you lend to them, that will be considered as compliance. But there are some restrictions, meaning that they have to show that they are contributing to the productivity of the awarded land for them to be eligible, because that is what is under the current legal framework. And then financing for agricultural activities that shall generally benefit agrarian reform communities. So in the previous version of the IRR, there was no mention of agrarian reform communities, but this is something which the DAR is currently working on. They are working with communities and they are building this. So since this is a project which the DAR is currently undertaking, bank financing that is directed to activities that will benefit what we call agrarian reform communities and not just specific ARBs or agrarian reform beneficiaries, these can also be counted as compliance for a bank. And then we also emphasize special types of lending arrangements. I heard earlier that you are helping build value chain in your respective communities. So we actually, Agri-Agra value chain is actually allowed under RA 10,000, but it is described differently. So in the version of the IRR, what we have done is we have highlighted this as an acceptable mode of eligible compliance. And then we also recognize now lending to agribusiness enterprises if they have supply chain arrangements directly with the agricultural borrowers. And we also allowed palay housing and farming homesteads. Actually, palay housing is storage for palay, and farming homestead is when you utilize land or area for the cultivation of crops and the production of livestock, and even if you're also staying or living in that particular area. So those are the enhancements, the recent enhancements to the IRR of RA number 10,000. So let us now move to the long-term action plan, which is our proposed amendments to the Agri-Agra Act. So there are three components in the proposed bill. So the first is we want to enhance access by rural communities to private sector financing. Second, and this is a new component, it involves the creation of a special fund which shall be used to finance agricultural and fishery-related capacity and institutional building programs, because we know that this is something which um, um, makes it difficult for certain agricultural cooperatives to access financing. So a special fund will be created which will be devoted to financing capacity building programs. And the third component is the establishment of what we call an Agricultural and Fisheries Finance and Capacity Building Council. So their main responsibility will be the management and the operations of the special fund. Now, let me go through some of the highlights of the proposed bill in the next slide. So first, we are pushing for the expansion in the coverage of the ultimate beneficiaries, because in the law that we have now, they only allow borrowings or lendings to agricultural related workers. But now we are expanding this to also allow lending to members of their household. And if they have enterprises, lending to their enterprises shall also be considered as eligible. Because we recognize that worker, he's part of our broader support system. So if you also lend to members of his household, it actually increases the productivity of the agricultural household as a whole. And then we are also broadening the types of activities that are eligible for private sector financing. In the current version of the law, this is very limited to agricultural related activities. So the bill that we are proposing, we are promoting financing for off-farm activities. So because there are certain like periods during a season wherein an agricultural borrower will do other things and not really just devote all his time to agriculture. And then financing for projects that promote environmental sustainability and mitigate climate risk is one of the enhancements we have introduced to the law. So promote funding to priority agricultural sectors by setting a multiple factors. So right now, there is a requirement for 10% for agrarian reform. But moving forward, what we are doing, we are transforming this to an incentive. So if you lend to agrarian reform, your loan will be multiplied by 10. So meron 10 times factor. And it recognizes grants. So if a bank provides a grant to that capacity fund, then that will also be considered as compliance. And funding for all financial institutions in rural communities will now be counted as compliance. Unlike before, wherein only those FIs which are considered as agricultural FIs will benefit from the lending. So in the next slide, the proposed amendments, we have not removed the quota of 25%, but we are pushing for removing the distinction between the 15% and the 10% agrarian reform. And we are proposing a sunset provision of 10 years because we feel that a 10-year period will give already the government enough time to implement the necessary programs for intervention. Actually, the RA 10,000 has already been in place for 10 years, and then an additional 10 years under this new law that will already be 20 years. So we are hoping that with the new enhancements, the government may consider pursuing other forms of intervention, because by that time, the agricultural sector will be more mature and progressive. Okay, so In the next slide, as a status, so I mentioned the IRR has already been signed, and this is targeted for publication in the coming days. And the proposed amendments to RA number 10,000, actually, House Bill number 6134 was already approved by the House of Representatives on 10 March 2020. So as early as 2020, we were able to work with Congress to pass a House bill, and counterpart bills have already been filed in the Senate, but they are currently pending in the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Food, and Agrarian Reform. So thank you very much. This completes my presentation.
All right. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that comprehensive presentation on Agri-Agra Law situation and, of course, the initiatives of Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas in, mitigating the risk for banks and, of course, pushing for a policy recommendation to amend the law. Okay, again, if you have any questions for our speakers and, of course, for Ms. Cynthia of BSP, you may use the Q&A box for that. And now I invite Ma'am Cynthia to answer some questions posted by our participants. So for the first question, so how can various institutions help to further push for the amendments of the Agri-Agra Law? So are there any multi-stakeholder participation on that regard po?
Currently, there are several bills which are already filed in Senate. So I think if other interested parties would be interested in promoting or at least supporting the bill, then getting in touch with the Committee on Agriculture, Food, and the Agriculture Committee in the Senate, I mean, that would already be a big help in lobbying for support for the bill. I mean,
Right.
if they get some indication that there is a general support for the bill, then it would help move its passage.
Mm-mm. All right, thank you so much po. For the next question is, do you have initiatives or programs that are agri-related but outside the Agri-Agra Law compliance? Does the BSP has that kind of?
Oo. Well, the BSP is actively pushing for financial inclusion, and part of the initiatives underneath that umbrella will actually benefit farmers because we are looking at access to formal financing, not just to, but on a broader basis. So programs under that umbrella will actually also benefit farmers. And we have also separately been actively pushing for the promotion of agricultural value chain financing. Several pilot programs have already been started in coordination with interested banks and certain areas din po. So these pilot programs will actually help scale up yung agricultural value chain financing and increase, parang they feel that this is a successful venture, then more groupings will go into that particular. And even for banks, I think if they realize that this is something which is sustainable and profitable, then this will also encourage private sector financing to the agriculture sector through this mode.
All right. Thank you so much po. So there's this another question about service providers for agriculture. Are they also allowed for loans like cold chain development, transport and logistics and technology?
Currently, the law allows what we call, I think those are the transformative parts of yung agricultural production, yung processing. But they will have to show that the loan will be used specific for an agricultural related activity. So transport is allowed, storage is allowed, but for the specific purpose of the loan, for it to qualify, it has to the borrower will have to show that this is related to an agricultural activity, because that is what is required under the law.
And back to the Agri-Agra Law. So there's this question from the panelists. How much is the total penalties paid by banks in a year for non-compliance, and how is this used?
So under
So
the
can that be
law,
used for, sorry, sorry.
ah,
Sige po.
ah. So under the law, actually the law provides yung utilization ng penalty. So this 45% goes to the AGFP, now the fill guarantee, and 45% goes to the PCIC, the Crop Insurance Corporation. 10% is left with the BSP to cover our administrative expenses, because we are technically the collecting agency of the penalties. So that is the usage. On average, in a year, banks pay out mga 1.5 to 2 billion pesos in penalties.
And can that be used daw po for capacity building of farmers or co-ops?
Right now, kasi it's very specific in the law that the funds should be remitted to the AGFP and the PCIC. So this cannot be diverted to other types of activities. But once these are remitted to those corporations, then they have the liberty of utilizing it according to the specified purpose. So mostly it's for guarantee purposes. But under the proposed law, which we are pushing for, the penalties of banks will actually be diverted to that capacity building fund. So if they are unable to comply with the requirement, then the penalties go to that capacity building fund, and it is supposed to fund the programs that are devoted to capacity building for agricultural cooperatives and organizations to build up their technical capacity. But that is something moving forward. At present, we are bound by the provisions of law, and they have to be remitted to AGFP and PCIC.
Ma'am Cynthia, I think VJ lost his connection for a while. So may I move on to the next question? So how about service providers? Is this asked already? For agriculture, also allowed for loans like cold trade development, transport and logistics and technology?
Yeah, I think I already answered. As long as they can show that the purpose of the loan is related to an agricultural activity, then it can be considered as eligible. But if it is something which is not related to agriculture at all, then it will not meet the requirements, because you also have to abide by the underlying intent of and the spirit of the law.
I think this is related to the first question, but I just would read it again. So it is related to the consultation session. So what can general public do to support amendments currently being done to inform farmers or entrepreneurs, especially those in the rural areas?
Okay. So since the amendment for RA 10,000 is a partnership with the DA and the DAR, so the DA and DAR is helping us discuss this with the farmers and fisher folks and their organized sectors underneath their regulatory purview. On the part of the BSP, we have also been active in participating in briefings such as this. So we have been giving a number of presentations wherein the participants come from the agricultural sector to also seek support for the bill.
Thank you, ma'am. I think in the question and answer box, there are also a lot of queries on studies, specifically number one on agrarian reform beneficiaries and others. So we can also invite you to respond to them by typing your answers in the Q&A box. So VJ, are you there already? Anyway, there's also a question on studies on profitability potential of agri-financing that will incentivize banks to finance the sector with or without the quota. So I think Ma'am Cynthia is already responding to the questions and typing your answers in the interest of time. So, and typing the answers in the interest of time. So we will move on to the next part of the session. I will handle it for now.
Ami.
Yes, thank you, Vijay.
Ami. Okay.
Yes, Vijay.
So thank you so much for that. Yes, thank you so much, Cynthia, and for our participants for your questions. So the next succeeding speakers will be presenting their challenges, programs, and opportunities for the agriculture sector. The question and answer will start once all our four speakers have presented their slides. So for our next speaker is Mr. Edgardo C. de Guzman, who sits as the Program Officer of Land Bank of the Philippines under the Value Chain Finance Team, which covers priority commodities such as high-value crops, aquaculture, coconut, and other agri communities. With this, welcome Sir Ed in PPSA, and over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this webinar, the Agri-Agra and the Philippine Partnership for Sustainable Agriculture, and giving this opportunity for us to present what we have been doing at Land Bank to reach and serve more farmers and fishers, as well as the available lending programs to support our stakeholders in the coconut, coffee, corn, vegetables, and fishery industry. Next slide, please. Land Bank remains steadfast in delivering its support to small farmers and fishers. As of December 31, 2020, the bank has assisted 2.67 million small farmers and fishers nationwide. And at the end of 2021, we are targeting to serve 3 million small farmers and fishers. The total loans to agricultural sector has reached 237.62 billion, which is slightly higher at 0.55% than the December 29 record of 236.31 billion, as the bank remained aggressive in providing crucial lending support to the sector despite the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Next, please. So these are our strategies to further expand our reach to small farmers and fishers. We have established 9 new lending centers in 2020, or for a total of 55 provincial lending centers and 9 lending units in the National Capital Region. We have dedicated account officers and account assistants within our lending centers who are tasked to cover all of the 1,634 municipalities or cities across the country. We continue to accredit partner agent banks or conduits that provide basic financial transactions in areas without land bank presence. We also maintain close coordination and working relationship with our partner agencies like the DA and their attached agencies, the DAR, DTI, and the local government units. Another strategy is that we continuously improve our credit process to make it easier for our small farmers and fishers. We have simplified our loan application form into a one-page template and have reduced our promissory note from 12 pages to only one page. So during loan application, our farmers need to submit the accomplished application form, the farm plan and budget, the barangay clearance, and the marketing contract with the buyer, if any. We have also launched our Lista Saka program and assisted our farmers and fishers to be registered in the DA's registry system for basic sectors in agriculture, for them to avail of the various government assistance programs like the crop insurance subsidy from PCIC. Interest rate is generally determined based on market rate and credit rating of the borrower, but For small farmers and fishers, we provide a concessional fixed rate of 5% per annum. Next slide, please. So Land Bank provides loans to all players within the value chain of an agri-commodity, whether you are an input supplier, the producer, consolidator, trader, processor, or manufacturer. We provide credit needs, your credit needs. Now, let me enumerate some of Land Bank lending programs that are applicable for coconut, coffee, corn, vegetables, and fisheries that are funded internally by Land Bank. So, in the interest of time, I will only provide the brief description of the programs, while you may view the details in our website. So, you may find there the eligible borrowers, the criteria, loanable amount, and so on. So, next slide. So first is the Sulong Saka program, or high value crops financing, that aims to support the cultivation, value adding operation, and marketing of high value agri commodities that include coffee and vegetable. Next slide. For coconut based projects, we have the Coconut Production and Processing Financing Program, which aims to provide credit support to industry stakeholders for their production, processing, and marketing of coconut-based products. Next slide. For aquaculture projects, we have the Sustainable Aquaculture Lending Program, or SALP, or Pagsasakang Pantubig, which is anchored on institutional buyers or processing or canning companies that are linked with fishers, cooperatives, or associations, and MSMEs that serve as growers or supplier to these companies. In collaboration with partner agencies, Land Bank implements several special programs with funding support from the DA, the BIPAR, DTI, among others, with lower interest rate. So some of these programs that can be tapped for coconut, coffee, corn, or vegetables in fisheries includes, next slide. We have the ASAP program, or the Agricultural Competitiveness Enhancement Fund Lending Program. So ASAP was created by virtue of Republic Act 8178, or the Agricultural Tarification Act, as amended by Republic Act 10848, or the ASAP Extension Act. The program aims to help increase the productivity of small-scale farmers and fishers and their cooperatives or associations by providing affordable credit assistance for the purchase of farm inputs and acquisition of agricultural fixed assets with minimal requirements. The only downside here is we have so many pipeline borrowers for now. It runs to about 4 billion for now, and we expect except new funds coming in June at about only 1.5 billion. The next slide. In cooperation with the DA's Agricultural Credit Policy Council and BIPAR, we are also implementing the expanded Sure Aid and Recovery Project, or Sure Aid COVID-19, and this project is to finance the emergency and production capital requirement of small corn farmers and fishers whose sources of livelihood and income are affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, thereby helping them regain the capacity to continue their agricultural activities and contribute to sustained food production. Next slide. Another new program that will be implemented this year is the Rapid Growth Credit Facility. RAPID is an acronym for Rural Agro-Enterprise Partnership for Inclusive Development. Next. The Rapid Growth Credit Facility is a collaborative undertaking by the Land Bank and DTI that aims to increase the income of small farmers and unemployed rural men and women. Under the RAPID project is the provision of matching grant to project beneficiaries, where RAPID may cover grant of up to 60% the cost of production inputs, machinery, facility, and equipment, depending on the project and type or asset size of the beneficiaries. So the land bank role is to land bank may finance the proponent's counterpart. Next slide. The market-driven and value chain-based RAPID shall be initially implemented in selected provinces in Region 8 and Mindanao. It intends to provide strategic business development interventions across the value chain of focus agri-sector like cacao, coffee, coconut, and processed fruits and nuts, ranging from farming, nursery, operation, production, processing, and marketing. Next slide. So for more details or clarification, please feel free to contact us at the Programs Management Department through phone numbers 8405-7450 or 8528-8542. Also, our lending centers nationwide will be ready and happy to provide our stakeholders with the necessary credit assistance, including further loan orientation and counseling. For this purpose, they may visit the lending centers nearest to your area. And thank you. And once again, good afternoon.
All right. Thank you so much, Sir Ed, for sharing with us your programs in Land Bank and, of course, your strategies in reaching more smallholder farmers. So if you have any questions to our speaker, kindly type them in the Q&A box, and we will ask Sir Ed and the rest of our speakers to respond to them right after the last presenter. So, okay. So previously, we have a bank. Now let's go on with a microfinance institution. So our next speaker is from Ahon sa Hirap Incorporated, or ASHI. So Angel Dorado has been with ASHI for the past 19 years, serving different roles from being a development officer, branch manager, to now the business development head of the organization. So without much further ado, I am now giving the mic to Sir Angel.
Thank you very much, BJ. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this event, to PPSA, for inviting us to share our part on empowering farmers and fisherfolks through agri-financing here in the Philippines. So next slide, please. So allow me to introduce to you our organization. So Ahon sa Hirap, or in English, to rise up from poverty, and popularly known in the area of our operation as ASHI, is a microfinance NGO dedicated to the empowerment of marginalized families to enable them to rise from all forms of poverty. So grounding its operation on the Grameen Bank approach pioneered by a Bangladeshi social entrepreneur and a leader who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for founding the Grameen Bank, pioneering the concept of microcredit and microfinance, none other than Professor Muhammad Yunus. From a simple research project at UP Las Baños in the year 1989 and registered under Securities and Exchange Commission in the year 1991, we are more than 30 years now in operation as an MFI in the Philippines. Next slide, please. So our vision, mission, and values. As stated on our vision, mission, and values, we are catering the marginalized families of the society. We help them to dream even bigger and assure them that ASHI will help realize their dreams and aspirations to various programs, products, and services as a microfinance NGO. Next slides, please. So what are the products and services we offered? So we have microloans for income-generating enterprises or in farming, house improvements, education, emergencies such as for hospitalization, for medicines, clear energy loan, social protection, among others. We also accept savings and microinsurance through partnership model. We inculcate the value of savings for the members' financial security and it provides us their safety net in case of emergency and also to avoid too much debts of the farmers. For other non-financial program and services, we are conducting training and managing business through social development programs, values education, programs on person with disability. We also have care for environment through series of tree planting, participation in clean and green projects of LGUs, managing conflict, gender and parenting. We also teach them about health and hygiene, and we also have partnership with Social Security System or SSS and private institution that conducting medical missions. We also have program for senior citizens. During the pandemic, we trained some of our senior citizens in rosary making, and until now, this project is ongoing and provide additional income for them. And we also have financial literacy, alternative livelihood programs, assistance to market, both local and institutional, through ASHI entrepreneurship program, and participation in other government programs. So that's our products and services. Next slide, please. So ASHI believes that agriculture plays a significant role in the Philippine economy and indeed the backbone of the economy. And to support the agriculture sector, and most importantly, to help the small farmers, we develop a program called ASHI Grameen Agricultural Program, or AGAP. The goal of this program is to serve farmers to till small farms, usually less than a hectare. We also intend to inspire these farmers to cluster together and to become agri-entrepreneurs. And how and when it started. On the year 2008, Western Visayas was hit by a strong typhoon that caused damages on infra and agri. Most of our members are greatly affected, and to help them, we introduced a program called Self-Help Integrated Education for Livelihood Development, or SHIELD program, wherein we train our affected members for alternative livelihood. And during the implementation of the program, we saw the great potential and the needs to support the agriculture sector, since most of the participants on the program are farmers. And next please, in 2010, we started the ASHI Grameen Agricultural Program, or AGAP. The objective of the program is to help the local farmers. Aside from access to financial capital, we also help them on marketing their produce. Next, please. And then we expand the program here in Luzon on the year 2016. And currently, we have 6 operational branches exclusive for farmers, 2 in Western Visayas, 4 in Western Visayas, and 2 in Luzon. And since our main priority is the assistance to market, also on the year 2016, we created AGAP Farmers Association of Pangi Laguna, or APAP, to enter into legal agreements with institutional markets. Next slide, please. So as of now, the ASHI Farmers Association of Pangil are registered under Department of Labor and Employment. They are the pioneer in Farmers Entrepreneurship Program.
Ano?
Okay. They are registered
Okay.
under.
Tapos. Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So the partnership, the Farmers Entrepreneurship Program is our partnership with the Jollibee Group Foundation, and ASHI is the local implementing partner. FEP is a program that links the farmers to institutional and local market. So until now, Jollibee has ongoing support to organize FEP clusters. Next slide, please. Our major initiatives Number one is compliance to Philippine good agricultural practices. So we are organizing training on GAP in partnership with Department of Agriculture to ensure food security, quality produce, proper environmental care, and good health, welfare, and safety of our farmers and their workers. And then we also have partnership building for local government units, private institutions, and organizations. We also assist the farmers on marketing their product through local and institutional market. They are already supplier to major institutional markets and some local markets. And then we also have the capacity building. Aside from the regular coaching sessions from Jollibee Group Foundations, ASHI also conducting training on basic accounting and simple bookkeeping, training on good manufacturing practices, among others, that the farmers need. Next slide, please. The Aga Farmers Association of Pangil, yeah, they are the pioneer in the FEP. Next slide, please. They are registered under Department of Labor and Employment and then started up as Farmers Entrepreneurship Program. So we have already PhilGAP certified farms. We have 9 certified farms for our spring onions producers in Pangi, Laguna. They have updated municipal accreditation in the municipality of Pangil. They are also registered in BIR, Bureau of Internal Revenue, and currently they are supplier of assorted vegetables to 4 institutional markets. Next slide, please. For the challenges, one of the main challenge, not only is ASHI, but also in our farmers, are the farmers' mindset. So we want them to have a mindset of an agri-entrepreneur. We are teaching the farmers to be critical by asking not only what to produce and how to produce, but also what to sell, how to sell, and to whom to sell. Because farming is a business, their business, a very profitable business. Secondly, the land or farm ownership. Most of our farmers do not own the land they till, and in effect, they cannot maximize the use of the land that results to low income. For the tenants, some landowners required a certain percentage share of the product, thus leaving only small portion of the produce to the farmers. And then another challenge is the limited access to agricultural insurance. So especially the vegetable producers, we are looking forward for partnership with PCIC for them. Another challenge is the aging farmers. Farmers are already middle-aged and sometimes too old to do farming. Also, the engagement of youth in agriculture. Young people are usually not interested on farming because of their perception of farming being antiquated and unprofitable. And then limited diversification. We always emphasizing and reminding the farmers that this practice will allow them to expand their production. And then also our challenge is high production cost and the farmers' understanding on technology. Sadly, there are still a lot of farmers who are not open to modern technologies. We want them to understand the agricultural technology has been shown to have positive effect on farmers' productivity and income, even on the prices of their produce. And then also, the challenge is low productivity. And lastly, the improvement on managing business, marketing, and record keeping. So members must learn to examine markets and add value to their goods to compete in local institutional markets. But in all these challenges, the biggest challenge now is the impact of the pandemic on agriculture. How long is pandemic going to last? How is agriculture industry going to be affected? We can make a speculation now, but we still don't know what will happen next. There will be continuous demand for vegetables and other farm products for sure. But the question is how the volume requirements will be. How about the prices? Can the farmers still learn from the current trend? The most in demand today is on marketing of products online, but the question is how technically poor-sounded farmers can adapt to this new norm in food industry. Is there any way we can intervene to help farming community? So farmers should be resilient to adverse situations. The main thing is that farmers need to acquire resilient approach to know that everything has value and there are possible conversion processes that may add the value to their products, which sometimes they have ignored or kept away from their visions. We can make them realize, sit with them, make plan, have several options, implement that was on the plan, and make assessment, then improve the process, and so on and so forth. Most of the time, farmers are more focused on their farm activities, and sitting with them, chatting with them, planning with them can make a big impact and big difference in the lives, and in effect, a big difference in the community. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much. God bless us all.
All right. Thank you, Sir Angel, for that presentation and for that words. And of course, for sharing the work that ASHI does for the communities and for the farmers. So again, you know the drill. If you have questions to any of our speakers, kindly type them in the Q&A box. And well, it will also be helpful to include where to direct your questions to. So, okay. Now, our next speaker is the Executive Director of the Foundation for Sustainable Society Incorporated, or FSSI. It's an institution which provides financial and capacity building services to social enterprises. For many years, Sixto Makasait, or Dodo, successfully led and managed many major civil society organization networks in the Philippines, including the Caucus of Development NGO Networks, or NGO, where he served as the executive director for 12 years, and the Pambansang Kilusan ng mga Samahang Magsasaka, or Pakisama. It's a national federation of peasant organizations, where he was a national coordinator for more than 6 years. Dodo also has extensive experience in economic development and cooperative development in various organizations he worked with. And currently, he is also a guest lecturer at the School of Government of the Ateneo de Manila University. With this, over to you, Sir Dodo.
Thank you, PJ. Good afternoon, everyone. First, thank you to PPSA for this opportunity to share our work in FSSI. So I'll be speaking about the Foundation for Sustainable Society Incorporated, or FSSI. FSSI is a social investment organization, or an NGO, with a non-profit and non-government organization. Next slide, please. And we're committed to support the development of sustainable communities through social entrepreneurship. And by that, we mean that we support enterprises with people, planet, and profit objectives, also known as the triple bottom lines. So we were actually started in 1995, so 25 years ago, through a debt for development swap between the Philippine government and the Swiss government. That provided the endowment fund for the foundation, which we have been using to support the development of sustainable livelihood and production of poor and marginalized groups. Since 1995, we have supported more than 240 social enterprises throughout the Philippines. I mentioned earlier that next slide please, that we support enterprises with triple bottom lines. Particularly, we look at, in the people aspect, we look at governance and the management of the enterprises, including compliance with government regulations, labor laws, good labor practices. We also look at participation of the members, if it's a membership organization, or the community, the partner suppliers that they have. We also look at whether the organization is supporting gender equality, We celebrated yesterday the International Women's Day, so that's also important to us. And we also look at whether the enterprise is providing support for the improvement, not just of themselves and their members, but of the community where they are situated. In the planet aspect, we look at compliance, so basic compliance with the appropriate or the applicable rules and laws related to the environment, including the Solid Waste Management Act, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. And beyond that, we look at whether they have good environmental policies and practices, beyond mere compliance with existing rules. In the profit bottom line, we'll of course look at the viability of the project, its margins, its returns, and its stability. Our services, we have financial services, and this would include loans. Actually, a big part of our portfolio now is with loans, but we also have what we call development deposits. These are deposits in cooperative federations mainly, and some cooperative bank. Well, actually, right now, one cooperative bank, which they use to lend to support social enterprises. We also have equity investments, although this is something that we still need to focus on. We're more into loans and development deposits as of now. And then we also have some modest amount for grants to support our partners. And we also have, aside from those financial services, we also have social enterprise development capacity building services through training, coaching, particularly in strengthening their capacities in the triple bottom lines. Well, particularly for loans, well, some details on that. We provide a minimum of, well, the loanable amount for our case. We're not as big as Land Bank or the other banks, but we have only around 500,000 pesos, a minimum to 40 million. Maturity will be up to 5 years, depending on the business design and the cash flow. Our interest rate is risk-based, and we adjust it annually, depending on the situation. Currently, it's from 7% to 12.5% per annum, based on a diminishing balance. Repayment can be monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or lump sum, again, based on the projected cash flow and the business model. We have various levels of approval, but if it's 5 million and below, we have monthly, basically regular processing for that. But if it involves amounts bigger than 5 million, then we have quarterly processing for those loan applications. We also have currently a special project with the support of the Australian government, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Australia. This is investing in women, and this is focused on supporting still social enterprises, but particularly women-owned or led social enterprises with clear and viable business expansion plans, and of course commitment to the 3DL targets. And by women-owned, we mean that these are enterprises in which women own 51% or more of the enterprise. And by women-led, that means that they have to fulfill three qualifications. One is that at least one of the two top positions is a woman, so it's either the chief executive officer, the COO, or equivalent positions in the organization. The second one is that at least 20%, it is at least 20% owned by women. And the third is that at least 30% of the board is comprised of women. So they must fulfill all of those three requirements. And if they're qualified under this special project that we have, we can invest with them a capital of from 7 million to 16 million through loans, through equity, or a combination of this or a joint venture. And aside from that, we would have more capacity to, well, more resources because of the support of the Australian government to provide them with technical assistance and capacity building support. So that's on top of our regular services. No? Well, our partners, when we say social enterprises, they could mean cooperatives. A little over a half of our current partners are cooperatives, but we also have cooperatives that are, social enterprises partners that are stock corporations or single proprietors or NGOs and POs. And then in terms of where our partners are located, next slide please. We have our office in Quezon City only, but we have partners all over the country, including all the regions of Mindanao, including Bar. And then in terms of our agricultural partners, currently we have 43 out of our total 68, so that's roughly around 2/3 of our current partners are involved in agricultural and fisheries, and also around 2/3 of our total outstanding loans is in agricultural projects, which would include production around 1/3, and also financial services for agri-production, and also wholesale and retail trade of agricultural products. Well, they're the top three in terms of our agricultural partners. Well, just some quick examples of just to have some faces among our partners is a cooperative in Bohol, and one of their members or two of their members are Carpo and Anita, who wanted to start a vegetable farm but could not get a loan from the bank, but because they are a member of the Danao Agrarian Reform Cooperative, they've been able to access financial resources and put up successfully their own vegetable farm. No? Another example is a cooperative in Eastern Samar, in the Visayas, where the closest bank is around 2 hours away, and so they're very vulnerable to loan sharks. But again, because of the cooperative, which is also a partner of FSSI, they've been able to access loans at a more affordable level. And then, well, before ending, we were told in our experience, what were the common challenges that our agricultural partners face? No? Well, very common is the lack of hard collateral. Then there's also, because of the nature of agriculture and fisheries, the vulnerability to natural disasters and the effects of climate change, whether it be drought or flood or typhoon. And then the lack of business and managerial skills and organizational capacity of many of the organizations and cooperatives, especially the smaller ones, and the low financial literacy of the sector. No? As FSSI, we have tried to adjust or address some of these challenges, all of these challenges. For example, we've adjusted the requirements, although we still prefer having hard collateral. That's not a strict requirement. In terms of vulnerability to natural disasters, we've tried to adjust to whenever our partners are hit, and also to strengthen their resilience. And also we provide capacity building services for them. But of course, our capacity, our resources are quite limited given the demand of and the need of the sector. So we see a lot of a big role that government and other civil society organizations will have to play. For example, with the agricultural insurance is a very important response to this problem. But agricultural insurance, which is appropriate and affordable for the sector, and also capacity building. That's why I was happy earlier to learn from BSP that they recognize that capacity building is because the demand, as was said earlier, is not there. And the demand is not there mainly because of the lack of capacity, not because of the lack of a need, but because of the lack of capacity of the farmers and their organizations. So we need to strengthen that. And that part of that is resources, But part of that is also developing more effective ways of delivering that capacity building. So thank you for this opportunity again. And if you wish to contact FSSI, we're on Facebook, we're on the internet, fssi.com.ph, and of course there's our office also in Quezon City. So thank you again.
All right. Thank you, Sir Dodo, for the presentation and for sharing with us the existing programs and initiatives that you have for social enterprises and for all other organizations. So for our participants, if you are interested to the programs or initiatives of FSSI, Sir Dodo is, one chat away here to this webinar platform. Okay. So all our previous speakers have physical infrastructure, while our next speaker, I learned about them actually while searching online for any digital agri-related financing platform. So our next speaker is June Okol, who is the co-founder and CEO of Agrabah Ventures. It is an agri-tech startup that aims to uplift Filipino farmers and fisherfolks nationwide through a fully integrated technology solution. Agrabah provides farmers and fisherfolks with direct access to large-scale markets, mobility, and financing through partner financial institutions. Prior to joining the corporate world, June has over 10 years of experience as a trader and seafood distributor, where he saw the unjust structure in the way that profits are divided in the agriculture value chain. Um, with his extensive experience in the agriculture value chain and in the corporate world, he saw an opportunity to provide farmers and fisher folks with a steady income through long-term partnerships with large-scale institutional buyers. June has earned his bachelor's degree in business administration from CAP College or CAP College and an entrepreneurship certificate from the Asian Institute of Management. Welcome to PPSA, June, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here as one of the guest speaker. So let me just share what is Agrabah. So Agrabah is a startup social enterprise focused on an agri-value chain. So let me share why we started Agrabah, or how the agriculture value chain looks like. So, okay. So this is the current agriculture value chain here in the Philippines. Farmers and fisher folks lack stable market channel, easy access to financing, and reliable logistics. So it is so fragmented that some studies say it takes around 7 layers of middlemen for produce of the farmer goes to the end consumer. So with this, we tried to find a way to at least even out the sharing of profit and streamline the process. So we started Agrabah Ventures. So Agrabah Ventures is a managed service provider that offers improved efficiencies in agriculture commodities trading, financing, and logistics. So we have an integrated platform. So we have Wharf Logistics and Finance. So Wharf is actually a purchasing platform where farmers could sell their produce, and our institutional buyers could also buy directly from farmers, which is also integrated into a logistics booking platform wherein the farmers could book their harvest or the logistics for their harvest. Once they harvest, the truck would just arrive on their area and deliver it directly to the client. Now, an integral piece of that is a loan matching platform. So we are piloting this finance platform currently manually, because the platform is still being built by our tech team. So we are doing this manually. So our farmers can now access to finance by just sending us a request, and then we match them with our partner financing partners. We have a partner bank that actually lends to our farmers. Right now, the minimum bite size of our partner is 100,000 for loans, maximum of 500,000 per farmer. So what's the innovation on this one? What we did is we tried to rearrange the value chain so that it's more efficient. With this, there's 50% less food waste because the handling is very minimal. Unlike the traditional, where in every step you have to transport the goods, now there's just one transport to minimize the food waste. With this, a farmer gets a higher profit margin and best quality produce for institutional retail client. Of course, it's 10 to 35% lower pricing compared to mall outlets if you buy directly from our partner wholesalers and retailers. And then in each step, there is always finance. So farmers would need money for buying inputs, for harvest, even post-harvest processing. And we are always there with for the farmers. We provide them access to finance through the platform. Now, how do we bridge the gap in agri-financing? Because the current challenge right now, most of the banks would rather just pay pay penalty than just complying or providing loans to the farmer. And we cannot blame them because first off, it's very risky for them. Some of the farmers don't even have a good or don't even have an ID. So what we did is we simplified the loan application process through automation. On the farmers end, we provide them with an ID. So it's easier for them to apply for a loan using our platform. We also assign them an ID that the banks can trace using our system. We also do data sharing with loan provider partner so that it's easier for them to process the loans. And of course, this is with the consent of the farmer. And then lastly, we are building a credit scoring for farmers. How do we do this credit scoring? Now, if you remember, our platform is an integrated platform where transactions are happening within. So the data we can gather, we can produce a credit scoring system. So we can tell the numbers of farmers, if they are 4Ps recipient, if they are PWD, indigenous, what's the size of their production area, what's the production capacity, and then what's the age, even the educational attainment. All of this data are gathered and we're using them to create a unique credit scoring for farmers. Now, on the bank's end, they are actually being de-risked. So the risk is minimal because we can show them that the farmers have a capacity to pay based on the transaction that's happening. So we can tell the banks that a certain farmer is earning this much. Traditionally, they cannot show that to the bank because some of them doesn't even have any DTI or financial statements. But with the transaction happening in our platform, we could show that and share that data to the bank so that they are already de-risked and they're sure that the farmers can actually pay them. So this is something that we are currently doing, and we hope that with the pilot right now, we could open the platform to more farmers by the end of the year. So this project is actually supported by our partners. We are supported by UNICEF and ING for the FinTech for Impact. We are also incubated under Asian Institute of Management, the Banato Incubator in idea space. So there's organization really guiding us to make sure that this project is gonna work by the end of the year. So that's basically what Agrabah does. So in Agrabah, we are just more than a platform. We build communities because we believe that the grass is always greener where you water it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, June, for that presentation and for introducing us, Agrabah. and of course to our participants. So now we maybe request our speakers to answer some of the questions raised by our participants. But I know some of you have already responded to the questions live. But there's this one question that I want to highlight because it's well, I think it's good to broadcast. So this question was actually directed to Sir Ed of Land Bank. So the question was, how does Land Bank addresses concerns on lending to farmers with insufficient proof of land ownership, especially on high value crop financing? So you mentioned earlier that that Land Bank only requires them to submit barangay certificates. Will that suffice as proof of land ownership, sir?
Yes, in various forums that we are attending, that issue is always cropping. So we have several programs with partnership with other agencies that actually accepts those farmers with no insufficient proof of ownership. And in that cases, we required them to submit like a barangay clearance or similar documents that will vouch for the farmer that they are the actual tiller of that land for so many years.
All right, sir. So as simple as barangay certificate is acceptable. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for that response. I think this question is directed to June. The question is, where are your farming communities or project located? So is it possible that Agri-Co-op, the organization of the one who sends the question, can participate in our digital platform?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Right now, we are supporting the seaweed farmers of Bicol region and the cut flowers of Benguet. So we're focusing in these two high value crops because we already have a partner buyer directly for them. So the transaction is continuously happening every day, and we are open to get more farmer groups to be onboarded once we finish the build of the tech platform. But for now, we could already start adding them to our registry so that we could start an initial interview with the cooperative.
All right. Thank you so much, June. And I hope the Sir Chris heard that the response of June. So another question for this question is directed to Ashi, Sir Angel. The question is, this is outside agri-financing, but it's also related. Do you also support your cooperatives in securing the GAP certification, sir?
Yes, we are helping them, and we have partner also who are willing to help the farmers on GAP certification because GAP certification process is very long. It took about 1 year for us to obtain the GAP certification, and the cost, of course, there are costs along the way, but there are partners who are willing to help us on the GAP certification of the farmers.
All right. Thank you, Sir Angel. And I think another question to Sir Ed of Land Bank. The question is, how do you finance past due farmers? Yeah, the question is that. How do you finance past due farmers?
Normally, if farmers has existing past due loans, they cannot apply for a new loan. So farmers need to update his or her account.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for that straightforward answer. And This question is directed actually to anyone or everyone or just to all our speakers. So in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, how is the rate of application to your programs or services, especially from the farmers or fisher folks? And the follow-up is, how about the rate of payment returns? Because it's a pandemic and we all know that everyone has been affected by the pandemic. So the question is directed to any one of the speakers. First. Okay.
For land bank, actually banks are mandated by Bayanihan law to provide some relief to farmers, borrowers in general that are affected or adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of our intervention is um, to extend the grace period on their amortization, and we also offering a new credit program. We call it the iResponse program, wherein our lending centers assess the conditions of our borrowers. If these accounts may need to be restructured, meaning they may extend the repayment period, postpone the payment of interest and so on, and if necessary to provide additional loan for them to recover and get back on their feet. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Uh, would the other speakers respond to the question, Sir Dodo or Sir Ju? Oh, I see. June open this cam. June, do you
Yeah.
want to respond to the question? Okay.
Okay. Based on our end on Agrabah's data, there is 100% repayment, especially this pandemic, because during the pandemic we've tracked the buying and selling of agri produce in our system, since it's an integrated platform. We see that there's an uptrend in the sales of our farmers and fisher folks, because there's a lot of effort of providing fresh produce, especially by the LGUs during the pandemic, and they're sourcing it directly from our farmers. So on the side of the loans, they manage to pay it because there's a ready market and they don't have to throw their produce. That's on our platform. I'm not sure with the other farming group, because I've heard some farming group have actually lost their market during the pandemic. But for us, we've secured the market for them, so the market was not lost during the pandemic, and there was an uptrend in the buying.
All right. Thanks, June. Sir Dodo, do you want to answer?
We definitely had lower loan approvals and loan releases last year compared to previous years, and also slight increase in problems with payments. Although have been most of them, almost all of them have been worked out through rescheduling or through. We also provided even before the law, and then with the law the grace period for the payment of the loans last year. This first 2 months we've seen improvement, and we hope that in terms of new projects, new loan approvals, and loan releases, and we hope that that will continue for the rest of the year.
All right. Thanks, Sir Dodo. So, well, in the interest of time, that's, I think, the last question for our speakers. So thank you so much to all our speakers for responding to the questions. And of course, there are also questions there in the Q&A box that you might want to respond to. And of course, thank you to our participants for making this session rich in discussion. So we are now in the last part of this session where everyone is invited to speak. So part of the program of this learning series is to identify opportunities for collaborations especially that there is potential in the PPSA to revive the Inclusive Agricultural Value Chains Consortium, or IAVCC, which is a consortium of financial institutions that has worked to mitigate the risk of loaning out to the high-risk sector, which is agriculture. So we are thus moving on to the roundtable discussion, which will be moderated by Ami Chua, the country director of PPSA. Over to
Thank
you,
you
Ami.
so much. Thank you so much, Vijay. So before we move on to the open forum, may we request you again to respond to these two poll questions, which will pop up on your screen in a few seconds. So for the first question, here. So what do you think are the main challenges in terms of accessing financing opportunities? Kindly choose all that apply. Can we see the poll question now on the screen? Maybe we can give 15 seconds for this poll question. Vijay, I'm not seeing the poll question. Are you seeing it on your end?
Yes, yes. It's already up.
Thank you.
Can you see the result?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, I think later when Pranav flashlight.
Okay, can you also share with me the percentage of the scores now, the responses now?
Sure. So the voting is already plus 72%. Okay. So we have Ami, we have 81%. That's the which garnered the most votes, which is satisfying the requirements of financing institutions. We also have 50% for both identifying available funding programs or opportunities and lacking insufficient financial credit portfolio. And
Thank you.
also, there's also some answers on unavailability of appropriate financing products.
Thank you so much, Vijay. Can we move on, Pranav? Thank you for to the next poll question, please. The next question is, based on your knowledge and current programs, which part of a value chain is funding most needed, whether it be production, sourcing, processing, or others? We can again give 15 seconds to respond to the poll questions. And Vijay, I need your help again to check the answers. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So the result, as you can see in your screen, we have about 52% for input and production financing. We also have higher percentage for, or 48% for post-harvest and marketing, and also last one is the distribution. So that's the result of the poll.
Thank you so much for responding to the survey. Of course, from your responses, we will use this to organize some learning sessions, more learning sessions in the next months. And of course, we will find ways to, of course, respond to the gaps and challenges. So again, moving on to the open forum, we will jump now to the open forum questions, which is, I think, related to the highest response, which is on satisfying the requirement of financing institutions. So the first question is, how can, do you think financial systems or government and other actors or enablers be prepared for the demands of financing agri-food chains? So specifically, how do you think can they help ease the challenge of satisfying the financial requirements and other problems in terms of agri-financing? So there are already hands raised. So may I call on Ma'am Dean Hernandez, please, to unmute your mic, please, and respond. Ma'am Dean? Miss Dean Hernandez? Okay, while waiting for Ms. Din, Sir Sunny Vedus of Zamboanga Grains, can you share your inputs, please? And please share your position and organization as well. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I can't see these that those hands are raised.
Sir Sunny Vedus, hand is raised. Sir Sunny?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, now maybe we can move on to Sir Chris, who raised his hand a while ago. Sir Chris, do you have suggestions on how you think financial systems or the government can help the other agri players to respond or prepare to the demands of the agri-financing value chains? Sir Chris of Agri-Co-op PH, maybe invite you to speak, sir. Or anyone from the call can also share their inputs.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Sir, if okay with you, can you state your name and your organization, sir? Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Chris Paes. I'm joining this webinar from Cebu. I am the CEO of Agri-Co-op Federation. We are a national federation of agricultural cooperatives, and our member organizations are into various agro-industrial activities. Now, my question is not only in response to what is being asked for here, but it is more of a general concern that has something to do with the strategic policy directions of our government, policymakers, research institutions, and all those who would like to change the future of our agri sector in this country. My observation is anchored on the fact that it is only in this country, among the countries in Asia, that we don't have a bank or a financing institution that is specializing in agriculture. In the case of Thailand, they have the so-called BAAC, a Bank for Agriculture and Agricultural Cooperatives. In Vietnam, the same thing, and also in Indonesia, in Malaysia. And in Korea, for instance, they have a very strong cooperative financing institutions only intended for agriculture. Now, considering the fact of the challenges faced by the agricultural industry, that the risk is higher compared to other industries, I think it is just reasonable and strategic in terms of specializing the kind of financing institution or banks that should be designed and should be mandated only for agriculture. That's my thinking, because agriculture, lending to agriculture, has been treated as only in the backseat, always lagging behind, and it is always being left behind. I think it is because of the nature of the risk involved in agriculture. But because of this characteristic, then the more that banks should be designed and should be specializing in agriculture. And of course, this argument of mine is presented as a challenge to the BSP or even to Land Bank. The possibility that Land Bank has to restructure itself, that should focus only on agriculture and on agricultural cooperatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sir Chris. So, just as how Sir Chris mentioned earlier, in the interest of time, we will just invite you to share general insights, and this may it be around the moderated guide questions or outside of those. So with response to Sir Chris's inputs, may I request Ma'am Cynthia or Sir Ed of Land Bank to share a few insights or comments, please?
Perhaps I can start.
Thank you, Ma'am Cynthia.
And then maybe si, si Sir can add. My understanding from the point of the BSP is that the land bank is actually the bank which is supposed to also cater to the needs of the agricultural sector. They are also, if you look at their portfolio, I think bulk of it is actually devoted to agriculture. And apart from that, they also manage other funds off books, wherein they administer the funds on behalf of yung national government agencies. But I'm not sure if it is possible to look at their current mandate and see how this can be further improved to help them more focused on the sector itself. But that is my general understanding of the bank. I'm sorry, I'm not from the bank supervision.
No worries, ma'am.
Okay.
Sir Ed of Land Bank, can you share a few insights or comments, please? Sir Ed?
Yes. Though land bank, our main mandate is to help the agricultural sector, especially the agrarian reform beneficiaries. But we are also a universal bank, and we also need to be viable. We need to sustain our operations. So we also finance not only agriculture but other sectors that are equally important sectors and priority of the national government, like the small and medium enterprises, the local government units, the housing sector, the health sector, and other similar sectors like education.
Thank you so much, Sir Ed and Sir Chris, and also Ma'am Cynthia. So for us in PPSA as a partnership platform, we will of course document that and take note of that, and provide this as an input when we also engage with the Department of Agriculture in developing some recommendations as part of their action plans. So maybe we have still time. We have 4 minutes left. We have still time for one more insight. Sir Ibarra or Sir Sunny, you were raising your hands earlier. Would you want to share some insights? If not, may I also invite, I noticed that there are other financing platforms or financing institutions in the call that may want to share their contact details with PPSA, and then we will share it with the participants. Sir Oscar Barrera, you're raising your hand, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Barrera.
Yeah, I'm being heard now, yeah?
Yes, sir. Sir, kindly share your name and contact, I'm sorry, your organization.
I am with Phil Export. We are the umbrella organization for small and medium-sized exporters, and a lot of them are also agricultural. Anyway, my concern is the answer of Land Bank when he said that if there are any past due loans, those past due loans have to be paid before any application will be considered. Now, I find that very, very strict, especially for Land Bank, which is supposed to be more developmental, because even other commercial banks, they do restructuring. They call it restructure a loan or refinancing. In other words, they do. It is in their vocabulary to restructure, to refinance, And it's, of course, that implies taking into account a existing loan or fund, which may likely to be past due. So I was wondering whether that flat comment that no, it has to be paid before you are considered by land bank application. I think I hope there'll be more lenient and more progressive in that thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Sir Oscar. Very helpful. Maybe Dean Hernandez and also Sir Sonny. They're both having difficulties unmuting their mic. So
Yeah.
just feel free to
Ami, can you hear me now?
Yes, there's Sir Sonny.
I'm sorry, technical problems, but I'd just like to address some issues on the farmer side because, as you know, farmer side has become past due to some technicalities in insurance and some banks have also been have past due accounts based on technicalities on agri guarantee support fund. I think the central bank's money and penalties goes to the insurance and the AGSF. So it would be good if that money can be worked on for a better insurance coverage and guarantee program for the banks so that they will be willing to finance production and that farmers will be past due credits will be reduced.
Thank you, Sir Sunny and Sir Oscar, for those inputs. I'm not sure if Sir Ed, would you want to respond to that, to those insights?
Yes, on the first concern of Sir Oscar, actually, we provide restructuring to farmers cooperative for valid reason, like if they are victim of typhoons or any natural disasters. And in that case, the farmers need to assign their crop insurance to us to lessen their loan. And for Sir Sunny Velus, actually we met last year before the lockdown.
Yeah.
Yes, actually that's one of the, for my understanding, that's the purpose of the lawsuit of the penalties being paid by banks for not complying with the Agri-Agra Law. So such funds can be is being utilized by Pill Guarantee as a guarantee cover for the farmer's loan. It's actually one of our credit enhancers that being offered to farmers production loan for them to have some kind of fallback if they have crop failures in their projects.
Thank you for that, Sir Ed. I think we got another chat message. So, in the interest of time, with those concerns, we will consolidate them. Just feel free to share it to the PPSA Secretariat's email at secretariat@ppsa-ph.org. And then, of course, we will do our best to reach out to Land Bank to find some answers. And hopefully we can, if you want to seek help to schedule meetings with them, just feel free to accommodate and help you. Of course, that's what we do for our partners and our members. So apologies that I think we are 2 minutes late. We exceeded 2 minutes. Maybe VJ, we can wrap up the session, but to all of our participants, rest assured that we will summarize all the discussions and also questions, and then share with them with an analysis and, of course, recommendations in the webinar report. So just please kindly expect the report in a few days or weeks. So to move on to the last poll question for this, how useful did you find this webinar? So we'll give maybe 15 seconds to respond. We are at 46%, 59, up a little bit more. Thank you. Okay. Can we target 80%? Oh no, it was ended. It's okay. Thank you for that, and thank you for responding to those questions. There's a question if the recording will be uploaded. Yes, we will upload the recording of this session. BJ, over to you.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, Ami, and thank you to our speakers, Ma'am Cynthia, Sir June, Ed, Dodo, and Angel for your valuable insights and sharing. We hope to stay in touch and continue our discussions. And we would also like to thank our participants for their questions and active participation today. So lastly, before we close, we would like to invite you to the webinar session on coconut value chains in Southeast Asia. It is a knowledge exchange and investor matchmaking event among the stakeholders of coconut sector, both of Cambodia and in the Philippines. So please anticipate the release of further webinar announcements for this session, but you may also scan the QR code on the screen. So again, thank you so much for your participation, and we hope to see you all in our next webinar. Keep safe and keep COVID-free, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.